let's get into this. Let's go. We've had a lot of people talking about better or worse, and there kind of seems to be, it usually kind of seems to be a little bit scattershot. You take a look at this position, that position, or whatever. There's some things there. So let's go ahead and just kind of go through better or worse each position. We're not going to do each position individually. We're going to do each position group. So we're going to do offensive line and so on and so forth. So when we look at the offensive line, when you look at this offensive line, better or worse in your mind?
It's got to be worse, just because regardless of, what you think about Lincoln and how much you would have paid him, you've said this. I've seen other content creators say you just don't overpay for a guard. And I get that. He did very well. He stayed very healthy, which is something the Niners seem to have an allergic reaction to, is staying healthy. But you just don't overpay in that position. But the fact that they got a rookie that's possibly going to replace him, who couldn't even get on the field last year, it was a second rounder, it's a little concerning. And then you look across the rest of the line. I mean, you got an aging center who I think is coming back. The right guard and the right tackle. I mean, right guard has been a problem for years. I mean, it was a problem in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. And then you have right tackle with Mcleod coming off of a quad injury. For a tackle, offensive lineman who has to have explosion come up through his body, constantly, to have a problem as serious as a quad injury. Yeah, they're definitely worse. But I mean, even with Lakin, they were still going to be suspect from center on. So yeah, I'd say worse.
Yeah, okay, and I'm going to agree with you. I will say that right now that I'll say that the offensive line, for the sake of this argument, the offensive line is worse. I guess you could say they're maybe going to be the same, whatever.
Right.
I think the part of the issue here when we go through this, when you're looking at are they better or worse, is we haven't seen Aaron Banks on the field. Right. The only people that have seen what Aaron Banks is capable of doing is the 49ers players and coaching staff, because as I've said a few times now since the offseason started, the folks like myself and the other people that are in the media that are at practices during the season, we don't really get to watch the offense. We don't see the offensive line practice like we do during training camp. During training camp, we get to actually watch practice, watch them, through team drills and all those kind of things. And that's even after the public is no longer showing up. And so we were able to watch them all the way up through training camp and until the 53-man roster was announced and all that kind of stuff. And we didn't see much of Aaron Banks, right? Because he got hurt against Kansas City. So there's a lot of growth that's happened between then and now. And so if you want to take the word of the team, then they feel pretty strong about Aaron Banks and what he can bring. That's what they shared. That's what Shanahan shared. So if Aaron Banks is the guy that I saw on film or somewhat close to that, the Niners are going to be fine at left guard. The Mike McGlinchey thing is a little bit more of a question mark because of like you said, the quad. Again, that's a position where I think that if McGlinchey, they didn't come out directly and say this. I think the question was more geared towards like the right guard position. But if Mike McGlinchey is not able to go, I would bet that you're going to see a competition that involves Jalen Moore to be the starter there. And Jalen Moore is another guy that they really like. And they just there needs to be some development there, and he needs to be playing more. So for me, yes, it's a negative or a worse, but I think there's a potential for it to be the same. I don't know if I'd say better. The one thing that I will say, though, is I continue to hear about how the younger guys could cause problems for the 49ers quarterbacks, and that, go back to 2020 and that comment that I made earlier about the 49ers could have made the playoffs that year if they had their quarterback healthy. And the response that you get back is, or at least the one that I've heard, is but the quarterbacks were getting hurt because the offensive line was having problems. I think it's important to take a step back. And I think it's important to realize that in 2020, when Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, the guy that missed his block was Lakin Tomlinson. It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't Daniel Brunskill. It wasn't any of the other guys over on the right side of the line of scrimmage. It was Lakin Tomlinson. When Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt in the playoffs this year against Dallas, the guy that missed his block was Laken Tomlinson. When Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt against Tennessee, the guy that missed his block that night was George Kittle. So one of those guys is no longer on the team. And the other guy is somebody who the 49ers and many around the NFL believe is one of the best tight ends in the league. So I think there needs to just be some context around that discussion when you start to talk about the injury to the quarterback position and what's happened in the past. Laken Tomlinson, his best asset was the fact that he was healthy 99% of the time. He was a very good run blocker. Pass blocking was not his best suit. I think that most people, if they sat down and had a discussion about it, would agree that that's the case.
And you have that perspective, which and that mindset where you can kind of, fans always have the goggles on of, being a fan and seeing things not maybe as clearly as people who can take a step back, especially if they follow the game and have, to have to write about it or, talk about it in some form or fashion. He came, I forgot Laken Tomlinson, what they traded him for, but it wasn't like he wasn't like the second coming of Trent Williams when they got him from the Lions. So
I think it was a 7th rounder. I think.
Yeah, I think with the Niners, a lot of fans just enjoyed the fact that he was healthy all the time, but maybe a lot of us, including myself, overvalued how really talented he really was. So high hope. I mean, one thing when I talked to Larry Krueger, the one thing he was a little confused by is he said that Aaron Banks had like slow feet. And for the type of running game that the Niners kind of run, his body and his feet don't really match the type of stuff that they want to do. So I guess if they're working on his feet in the offseason, trying to get him, I don't know if you can do anything about that. But and I know they say his body's being transformed as well, because he looked pretty soft when they brought him in last year. He didn't look, for as big as he didn't look imposing. So maybe getting off that college meal plan and getting into the NFL with the nutritionist and a weight room, maybe that'll do him some because come on, what do you eat in college? Ramen noodles, pizza, Chinese food, like that's it, dude. And I would have nothing wrong with that if I was an offensive lineman, but dude, when you get into the NFL, bro, it's like a totally different game. And I'm optimistic that he's going to be good. It's just it is worrisome with Trey as your quarterback because Trey's the future, man. And you don't want to get him hurt. I think maybe the Niners say, like, hey, he's a lot more mobile and he can move outside the pocket. And if the offensive line struggles a little bit, we have a little bit of an insurance with his feet. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I will say this. Larry's not wrong. Because that was something that I heard more than once while I was walking around the practice field, especially watching the offensive linemen, were them talking about his steps and his footwork and just it's so minute, the things that they need to do. I wouldn't say that it was an issue necessarily that he doesn't have the quickness, but there were definitely some footwork issues that he was dealing with last year early on in camp when he first joined the 49ers. And that kind of goes to, a lot of things. I know that there was the overriding thought was that he was brought in to start for the 49ers right away and move on from Daniel Brunskill at right guard. I don't have anything to prove this, but maybe the process that they were going through with Aaron Banks was similar to what they were doing with Trey Lance. They were getting him in early, getting him ready. Everything it seemed like in that draft class of 2022 or 2021 was for them to contribute in 2022. It just kind of felt that way. And there's reasons behind that. The 49ers, we're going to move on to the wide receivers, but I think it's important to realize like the 49ers they have a lot of money wrapped up in 5 guys, and it's going to grow. It's going to become 7 by, in the next 2 years. They're paying Trent Williams top of the market money. They're paying George Kittle top of the market, even though, that those numbers haven't quite hit yet, but those are guys who are their top players, right? George Kittle, Trent Williams, and so on. And so that's why you make the moves and you start to try to kind of supplement through the draft. And offensive line is a position that you should be able to do that with. And the 49ers have always been about kind of having their number for each position. I'm talking about this current regime of 49ers. So there we go there. There's the offensive lines. We both agree that they're worse. And a lot of that has to do with, at least like I said, in my feeling, it has to do with just because we haven't seen it yet. Maybe they're not going to be worse when they actually hit the field.
Right.
Better or worse, wide receivers. And you can go in the middle if you don't feel it's one or the other.
I'm kind of in the middle because I feel like at the top we're good, right? We got Debo, we got Ayuk, but we don't really have much guaranteed behind them. I mean, we brought in Ray Mcleod, who's more of a returner, but I guess he was used somewhat regularly, like not like super regularly, but he was used somewhat in the Steelers offense. Little bit of a gadget guy, which the Niners are real good with their gadgety plays, but still don't understand what's going on with Javon Jennings. And after that, it's pretty much nobody knows. Trent Sherfield went to Miami. That's my brother's squad, by the way. They're looking pretty good right now. I hope they do well next year, except for when they play us. Yeah, it's a little bit of a in the middle. Like what's going to happen? Are we going to hit somebody in the draft? Are we letting things kind of trickle down in free agency, and we're going to bring somebody in if there's anybody even available anymore? It's a little bit alarming that they're like top heavy and then nothing. So,
yeah, I think that on that's one where I could say, I don't know if we'd say they're better or worse. I don't think they are better or worse, right? I think that's one where they're the same. As they stand right now, they didn't really, and the reason I say it is because they didn't really get anything out of Trent Sherfield as a receiver. I mean, he had the one catch against Detroit, but that's, Brandon, you can or Debo Samuel, any of those receivers can run that route and do what he did for that touchdown there. So I think they're about the same at the wide receiver position. Debo Samuel, I think, is one of the top 3 guys in the NFL. Brandon Ayuk has the ability to take off, I think, under Kyle Shanahan's offense with Trey Lance there. I think that combination, that ball coming down the field more often plays to Brandon Ayuk's strengths. Javon Jennings, we saw him kind of come into his own. So you have a really good threesome right there. You mentioned Ray Mcleod. I think we're going to see at least one draft pick coming and being added into that group as well.
It would be, I mean, like I would, if you were to think of a draft pick, is there any chance in God's green earth that the Niners would trade up for a guy like Christian Watson, or is that just I just don't think they have enough firepower unless they use picks from next year that they're supposedly being rewarded. I mean, I feel like they shouldn't possibly, because I don't think that's a position of need, so to speak. But my God, if that was the case, I didn't follow combine or a lot of that stuff this year. So, but wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. But everything kind of points to the wide receiver group in the draft being pretty deep. I think the 49ers can get a receiver with either their second or one of their third round picks that's going to be a good addition for that group. That's just my gut feeling based off of the speed and the different things that the guys that position brings. It's a really deep position in this year's draft. I think they have the ability to add somebody there that would fill in some needs for them.
Makes sense.
So I would look at Christian Watson. Everybody wants Christian Watson because and they know about him from Trey Lance, but there's a lot of other good wide receivers out there as well.
Yep.
I wouldn't mind getting Christian Watson. The guy's a big guy that can do a lot of things down for many years that the 49ers need. So that would be a nice pickup for them if he kind of falls to him. What about tight end? Do you think tight end is better, worse, or the same?
It seems like it's the same. You got Kittle at the top, of course, and then you have Dwelly and Warner, who both did nothing last year. I mean, at all. Like, there was no production behind Kittle. So I wouldn't mind them with a mid-round pick, like addressing tight end, and say the 5th or 6th, even if it's a guy who does just one thing well, like catch the ball. I know the Niners are big on blocking tight ends, but it'd be nice to have another tight end who could, run routes and catch to help Kittle, because I feel like Kittle is so zeroed in on every game. But But yeah, I feel like they're the same. I would love to see something happen there. I know Kyle Shanahan's a big fan of two tight ends and just hasn't had had it transpire yet. He had the what's his name during 2020, and that was a disaster because he got hurt. What's his name? You know what I'm talking about. He ran into the wall in Giant Stadium and hurt his ankle. He played for the Redskins. I forget his name. Anyways, point being, Kyle has flirted with it. Yes. He's flirted with it and wanted to do it. And
he's played around
hopefully
with it.
It's still.
I know exactly who you're talking about. I can't think of his name.
Justin Reed or something Reed, or I forget his name.
Yeah, something. It was Reed.
Jordan Reed. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Jordan Reed. See, the 49ers don't really need a guy like Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed was awful. Jordan Reed had some plays, and he could do some things every once in a while, but he really wasn't very good. The 49ers were better off with a guy like Ross Dwelley than they were with Jordan Reed. And the issue with I really like Ross Dwelley. I know it's kind of a punchline because of the way that some folks talk about him, but I think that Ross Dwelley is a good tight end. He has really good hands. He just doesn't have the playmaking ability of a George Kittle, the run after the catch ability, right? But I agree. I think the tight ends are the same. I mean, the room is the same all the way through. Right now, they have Kittle, Dwelley, Werner, Tanner Hudson, and Jordan Matthews. All five of the guys that were in their tight end room last year are all on their roster right now. And they could possibly add to that position, bring somebody else in to compete with Dwelley or Werner for one of those spots. I could see, because right now Dwelley just kind of keeps coming back on 1-year deals. It would be interesting to kind of see what they do, because do they maybe go with 4 tight ends instead of? Do we see this team change? I think is part of it. I guess is where I'm going. Do we see a full do we see the way that they kind of deployed their offense change? Are they using more 2 tight ends than they've done in the past? Are they using kind of getting to be a little bit? Are they going to try to be a little bit of a mixture of not being in a, Kyle Juszczyk's got to be a piece of this offense, but maybe they're using a tight end like Dwelley or Matthews or Hudson or something like that as an extra receiver that's out there. I mean, Matthews we know is a receiver that put on some weight and kind of is in between. Maybe that's the kind of direction that they go. I don't know. That'll be something to keep an eye on as they go through.
It'd be interesting to see if they could become more multiple in their looks on offense, like not be so kind of, because the Niners are pretty. You can kind of peg them for what they like to do. They're pretty. I mean, Kyle pretty much runs things anyways, regardless if teams try to stop them or not, because he, most of the time he is the smartest guy in the room. But yeah, I would be all for them trying to change things up and be more multiple in the stuff that they show, because then it just makes it harder for the defense,
Yeah, no, totally, it does, and that's kind of something that they need to do as they move forward with Trey Lance. I think is kind of adjust their game a little bit. I think we saw Kyle Juszczyk move into more of he was a fullback, but they also used him kind of in a tight end role at times last year, a little bit more maybe than we'd seen in the past. So there was definitely some change ups that I think are geared towards what we're going to see this year with Trey Lance under center. It's funny because we got Lee here, and he's talking exactly what I'm saying is that Kyle Juszczyk is a really good player that needs to get the ball in his hands more often.
Mm-hmm, for the amount of money they pay him, especially.
I really think that the guy should be their tight end too. Right. Even when they're in their 22 personnel, it's like they have 2 tight ends on the field. They can get him the ball. And if you go back and you watch as much film as I did of Trey Lance when he was at North Dakota State, the one thing that we know is that he likes to throw to his tight ends and fullbacks. He'll throw the ball down the field as well at times, but he really liked to work those underneath routes off of play action and stuff in the tight ends and fullbacks got worked quite a bit. So that could be a piece of the puzzle here that as we move forward. And that's a good transition into the running backs. Again, we talked about the tight end. That's the same, it's the same running back room. I think if we look at the running backs, we're in the same boat too, right? The running back room was probably about the same as last year.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that they're worse only with the potential. of what they could have been with Raheem Mostert, the speed factor, and just
Sure.
how you have like almost like a thunder and lightning type of approach with Elijah Mitchell and Raheem. But yeah, I would say they're the same because we never saw Raheem Mostert last year. He was hurt like within the first game, I think. So yeah, they're the same. I would love to see them get somebody with a little bit more, a little bit more juice in his step, a quicker guy, whether he's undrafted. I have total confidence that even with Bobby Turner taking a step back, you wonder if they're in communication with him still. Maybe he's doing stuff from his home or whatever. But I just have a lot of confidence that my brother even too is a Dolphins fan. He's like, you guys find running backs everywhere. So I'm not extremely worried about the running back position because I feel like Kyle and the staff have just an ability to find people that you never would expect, and then they end up being like 6th rounder, and you got Elijah Mitchell. I mean, that's when I say it's stupid, I mean that in a complimentary way. It's just stupid. Like, really? He was so good. I think they overused him last year. I would like to see more people touch the ball, but I think it might have been Larry again who I talked to. He says when Kyle falls in love with certain players who are successful, he uses them. And maybe sometimes he overuses them, like Debo and him. But yeah, I think they're the same. But I would love to see if they could add, I don't know, a little bit more speed to the group just to counter what Elijah Mitchell and what's his name that they drafted who didn't play last year.
Yeah, Trey Sermon.
Trey Sermon they're just a little, they're not as quick as say a Raheem Mostert. I don't think anybody's as quick as Raheem Mostert, but it'll be interesting to see.
Well, the guy that's as quick as Raheem Mostert is Deebo Samuel. That's right.
It's true.
So that's funny.
Why they use him.
Yeah, it was fun to hear you say thunder and lightning because that was kind of the term that I kept they kept popping into my head, and I kept putting that in my game stories at different times because that's what they were. They were the thunder and lightning. You had the guy that was just kind of pounding away in blanking on his name right now, Mitchell. And then you had the guy that was taking it to the house in Deebo Samuel. And I think that is a big miss. It is something that they need. And I feel like right now, the reason I say the running back room is the same is because it is.
Literally. It literally is.
It's just like the tight end room. It's literally the same.
Right.
And like you said, Raheem Mostert, I think he played 2 plays last year. Might have been 3, but he was I think he ran the ball twice and he was done for the year. So just think of what that team could have been. So that's the thing here. So here's the thing: is we're not even talking about draft picks at all. So we're just basing it off of where they are at this moment without the draft. But I think that's another position that they need to look at in the draft is they need to find a running back or look for a running back that has some breakaway ability. Although I like Trey Sermon, I don't see him as a home run hitter in the NFL yet, based off what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and then they also brought about Jeff Wilson Jr. as well. He's kind of a bruiser. He kind of likes contact. He didn't look great last year. I think that knee affected him. He didn't quite look like himself from like say 2019. So they're pretty they're loaded, but they could always use more. As it showed last year, they never have enough running backs on this team. Sure.
Yeah. And Jeff Wilson Jr., his biggest role for the team over the second half of the year when he came back, he ran the ball a little bit, but really the role they used him in was he was the fullback when Debo would get into the backfield. So when they go into like 11 personnel with Debo Samuel lined up in the backfield, a lot of times it would start with Jeff Wilson Jr. being in the backfield and then they'd slide him back or something like that, right? If you go back and you really kind of look at the film, Jeff Wilson Jr. was more in the fullback role in that, but they were getting into it in different ways. It was the way that they deployed their personnel made it look like they were in 11 or whatever, but it was really him and Debo were the 2 running backs on the field, but one of them the right receiver, so it makes it hard to count for.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Same. And definitely the same.
It is. It's so crazy. But this next one we're going to jump into, I don't think we're going to be able to say they're the same. It's going to be a better or worse scenario. And that's the defensive line. What do you think? Well, because the losses there were Contavious Street and DJ Jones.
Well, I mean, I would say worse only because I feel like DJ offered he was good in both against the run and the pass. I mean, he could rush the passer, even in his stout little body that he has, stout little fat guy. But Kentavious Street got washed in the run game quite a bit. So to me, that's not really big. It's not really as big of a miss. I guess it all depends on what we get from our number, our number 13 pick from 2020, Javon
Yes.
Kinlaw. That's going to really determine if we've gotten worse or better. Right now, I would say we were worse just because I think who we brought in to replace DJ Jones is not quite the same level caliber player. Just from a quick look at him, but I could be wrong. It's hard. I mean, they're really deep. They got Charles Omenehu. They brought back. They're bringing back Jordan Willis. They brought back Kerry Hyder. So they're deep, but a lot of those guys kind of all do the same thing. So it'd be interesting to see. If they address edge in the draft and it's a huge hit, then all of a sudden, you ask me this in 6 months, I could say, oh, way better. But if you had to ask me right now, at this point in time, April 1st, 2022, I'd say they're worse. Just because who they brought in to replace DJ Jones, I don't think is as good. That's it.
Okay. Are when you say that, are you thinking that they brought in Hassan Ridgeway to replace him? Is that why?
I mean, it looked like a move for move type of thing. I mean, you probably have more insight on that, but it just looked like they replaced DJ Jones with a cheaper option. But I could be wrong.
No, that's okay. I think that as I look at the way that the team's constructed, the question that I have on the defensive line is Eric Armstead. Are they going to continue to use Eric Armstead as a defensive tackle? Because if that's the case, then it kind of clarifies where everybody's going to fall.
Okay.
And if he's going to be an interior defensive lineman, then that means that you're going to have the guy that's replacing DJ Jones is actually Javon Kinlaw, right?
Right.
And then the guy that Hassan Ridgeway is replacing becomes Kentavious Street.
Okay.
And then the guy that replaces Arden Key is Charles Omenehu. Then you also have Jordan Willis and Kerry Hyder, who are Willis is an outside rusher. I don't remember seeing Willis really be used on the interior in the pass rush. He was usually coming off the edge. Kerry Hyder is a guy who can play inside or outside, but has been very at his best for the 49ers. He was on the outside. So when I look at this one, I think they're going to be a better pass rushing team.
Okay.
Javon Kinlaw, he struggled a lot at times during his rookie season. If you base it off of what Pro Football Reference tells you as far as the total pressures, he was at 10, which is more than what the 49ers got at DJ Jones last year, which was 6. When you compare the number of snaps that they played, because if you go, and then when I say that, I'm saying Javon Kinlaw in 2020 compared to 2021's DJ Jones from a pass rush perspective. And the reason I'm comparing those is because the snaps is almost the same. It's like 550 something to 546 or something like that. It's pretty close. So you're right. It comes down to Javon Kinlaw. Is Javon Kinlaw fully healthy and ready to go and ready to be explosive like he said and all those kind of things? If he is, then I think they're going to be better overall. They're going to be better in the pass rush, but I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back in the run defense. That's how I see them on the. So it's kind of for me. I'm going to say it's the same because I can't really say that they're better. I don't think they're worse. I think they're kind of the same and a little bit worse here, but a little bit better here. So it kind of averages out to the delta. Same. What
was your opinion on the loss of Kerry Hyder? Is it a wash by bringing in not Kerry Hyder, Arden Key? Is it a wash by bringing in Kerry Hyder to replace him? Is it pretty much the same production, or do you think one was better than the other?
Well, Key's a guy who he kind of exploded once they moved him inside. And I believe that the move that they made last year to trade for Charles Omenehu from Houston was to get themselves ready for another interior pass rusher, because that's where Amenahu, although he's listed as a defensive end, when you go back and watch where Amenahu is rushing from when he was in Houston, he was always he was almost always an interior pass rusher. So he was usually rushing in the inside. And then you have Kerry Hyder, who can do both. I think Hyder's more of a backup on the edge, and I think Amenahu is going to be more of an interior pass rusher. So that's why I think Amenahu replaces Key. And I think it helps out a lot when you have guys like Eric Armstead and, Nick Bosa lined up around you. Because you got to remember, I mean, Arden Key had, I think, 4.5 sacks in 3 years before last season.
Right.
So they're taking a little bit of a gamble on Amenahu, but he also, he kind of came on over the second half of the season. He had that one good game in the playoffs, and it'll be interesting. He might be the one that you're talking about. There's the question marks there are Kinlaw and Amenahu, I think, are probably your biggest ones. Eric Armstead's a question because is he an inside guy or an outside, kind of doing that shifting kind of thing that they do with him. For me, I think Eric Armstead's at his best when they just play him inside, let him stay there at one spot instead of going back and forth. They have the depth to handle the edge with Samson Ebukam.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about Ebukam. And you're right. When you break it down the way you just did and you kind of say who replaces who and who kind of takes on the role of, said departed guy, it makes me almost say that they're somewhat same or if not better, just because you have a little bit more insight on that than I do. Because I'm a fan. It's recency bias. You see what you see from the previous season and you say, this guy's better. But if you go actually take yourself out of a fan's head and put yourself into a person who follows a team and has to break things down, you kind of see things for what they really are. So I'm taking your word for it. You have a way of like making me like rethink what I think about things because you're able to kind of take the fan perspective out of it. So interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of the way that I'm seeing it come together. I don't have any insight that you don't have in terms of. It's not like there's a person that's in the organization that I'm basing this off of. It's just based off of observation, kind of seeing the way that they're doing things. So I just want to be, the next one, let's jump over to linebacker again. It's funny as you go through this because there's really not a whole lot of change, right? I mean, the linebacker group is the same linebacker group they had last year. I mean, they've got the best. I mean, I'll kind of just run first here. You've already got the best middle linebacker in the game.
Yep.
You have Azeez Al-Shaair, who, by all accounts, had a big improvement last year when he got to play because he was playing so much in place of Dre Greenlaw, who is coming back. They have Dre Greenlaw right now under contract, and they might, who knows? I know he's somebody who fans have talked about could be a trade piece on the road, but Greenlaw, he might be that piece. And then you have who else do you have?
Flanagan Falls.
Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, who, he's a pretty good player as well. And then on top of that, you have, didn't they bring in a linebacker? Yes, they did. Oren Burks.
Burks, yep.
Who they added. So that's kind of your 5. I would say that from a linebacker's perspective, not talking about what Burks does on special teams, but from a linebacker perspective, they're probably pretty similar.
Yeah, I think that they're similar, but they're really damn good.
Yeah.
I really hope they keep Dre Greenlaw. Why take away from a position of strength unless you think you can really, get something for him picks wise, or if you swap him for another, kind of middle of the road player at a different position from another team in a trade. I hate when like teams think they're good in a position and then they end up moving on from somebody. And then that year coming, they have a bunch of injuries and have been like, man, if they just would have kept Dre Greenlaw. So, because I was like that when that linebacker we traded to Denver last year, I forget his name. He was having a really good camp and a really good preseason. And then the Niners ended up, Azeez Al-Shaair came on. I forget his name. So, yeah, I think that they're really damn good. So I'm cool with things are the way that they are, but you never know. I mean, there's always the draft. There might be some other draft in the 6th round.
Yeah, we're basing that off of where they are at this moment. Yes, the draft is going to come up, and that's going to affect their depth pieces a little bit, and so. But I think right now they're in a pretty good spot. If you do move off of Dre
Yep.
Greenlaw, that means that if you move off of Dre Greenlaw, it's because you really believe that a guy like Warren Burks or Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles gives you the ability to not drop off at the linebacker spot.
Right.
Not that I know. I've never really been in that boat. I don't think, Greenlaw, I think it's a little bit more love for 49er fans than what he actually brings to the table because of the one play that he made up in Seattle, which was a great play. So I'm not taking anything, making it like that wasn't a great play, but that was just one play out of, 1,000 plays that he's had to go out for during his time with the 49ers.
You're looking at things more from a down in, down out perspective instead of do you see what he did against Russell that one time when he intercepted him or when he, saved the season? Yeah, I definitely think that I thought Aziz played better than him when he was in there. And I also, the guy that we talked about was Jonas Griffith. I wouldn't have mind keeping him, but who knows? Yes. Oren Burks, from what a lot of people were saying, he was actually pretty good when he played on defense in Green Bay. They showed some plays of him. He was a quick sideline to sideline guy you could make tackles. So, and if he's not your starter and that's your backup, then great. And he could also play special teams. So, we're not in the building every day. I'm not in the building every day. So a lot of us fans think we know stuff. We really don't know anything. So I'm saying they're the same, and I hope they really don't move on from Greenlaw because I think he's great depth. But if you can get something for him and you can bring something in that is equal or better at a different position or a draft pick, then do it, I guess.
I like the "I guess" part at the end of that one because that's
right. Because then it doesn't leave me guilty if they bring somebody in and he sucks. They're like, Aaron, you said that. I'm like, so I always leave it open for
I also said
little wiggle room.
I give myself an out by saying, I guess. I
guess.
Right? Yeah. No, you're fine. And then real quick, this goes back to our discussion on the defensive line, and it's from Jay Aguayo, 56. Thank you, Jay. He says that Jack Kinlaw is the X factor. I think we should get the best edge rushers in the second round. We need to put enough pressure to help Bosa get one-on-one matchups.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that edge rusher is something that they might go there at the top, at the end of round 2 with their first pick. Because just kind of depending on where the board falls, edge rusher is definitely in play for the 49ers. The other thing I will say, though, too, on that is that Samson Ebukam played pretty good in the second half of the year. He's a guy who had been going back and forth. He'd been kind of doing the Eric Armstead thing, right? Inside, outside. But instead of doing it inside, outside, he'd been going from a linebacker to a pass rusher. And then last year he was able to focus just on playing defensive end and rushing the passer and what it takes to kind of be that defensive end role. And he came around pretty good down the second half of the season. And if they can get a little bit tighter coverage in the secondary, then I think they're going to be just fine.
Totally agree. Yeah, I thought he played well in the later part of the year. A lot of people were saying, he was playing a position that he wasn't necessarily not comfortable with, but he played a lot of outside linebacker as opposed to a 4-3 defensive end rusher. So it'll be interesting to see him with another offseason, with Coach Chris Kasurek, who I think is an absolute madman, but I don't know, man. Like, you say what you want about these coaches, but like, you bring a guy in who ain't done diddly poo on another team, and then he comes in and he has like 8-10 sacks. So I'm on the Chris Kasurek train. I'm on the DeMeco Ryans train. I was a little iffy on both of them last year at certain points of the year, but yeah, he's that if they can get another edge rusher, you're right. I mean, that'd be pretty solid, man. And then you're right. If you get stickier on the backside, I mean, that's what man. I'm already ready for football season right now. When I start talking about this stuff, I start like zoning out and thinking about the season. But yeah, that would be nice. Hopefully they do that.
You got to slow down a little bit. We're still 4 months away from training camp.
I know. I was so burnt out at the end of the season. I was just like, I'm going to stop doing YouTube for a while. And then I'm like, oh yeah, free agency and the draft's coming up. What am I doing?
I was not burned out, but I want to see another game because it's a lot more fun to talk about games and talk about hypotheticals, because this is the time of the year. Right now, this is where I struggle a little bit, because this is the time of the year where you can pretty much say any wild thing that you want to say, and you can have like a little crumb that backs you up, and then and you utilize that, and or whatever. That's where I struggle with the off season. Plus, sometimes I'm here's the thing for me is like I'm not. I guess I need to like maybe change the approach that I take and just kind of become more of a negative Nancy, and just kind of just start ripping on people all the time, regardless of whether there's any kind of truth or real reality behind it. I think that might be what I need to do moving forward.
The one thing too is like my nephew's a Niners fan. He's kind of I wouldn't say we're negative. We're just like a little bit like hard to please. We always talk about how the off season and the draft is when we have all the hope, and then the season starts. Like the 2020 season and all the seasons prior to 2019. My nephew always said we have hope in April and May and March and all those months, and then the season starts. So right now, everybody's making great moves, and everybody's going to be really good, and everybody's had the best. You get those draft shows after on ESPN, and everybody gets the awesomely graded draft, and everybody's like so good, and then the season hits, and it's like, wow, that was way off. So yeah, right now, like once the draft hits and the draft's over, and like everybody's healthy before training camp, the optimism could shoot through the roof, and I might be a lot more positive than I am right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, the season starts. Yeah, well, and this is the season starts. They just had the good year, so if we go based off of their history,
we're gonna be bad next year.
we're gonna have a long 2022.
Great.
Yes, but let's kind of take a step back. Daryl, I see your super chat, and we're going to get there in a minute because that's a topic that we're going to talk about is that position. So we'll get to that in a minute. So stick with us. But I want to go back to, when we're talking about Jay's question, I did mention, getting in some pass rush to help out the secondary. And so that leads us into better or worse, the 49ers secondary. Kind of what are your thoughts on that? Because this is definitely one where I don't think we can say they're the same. So
I think they're worse.
What are your thoughts? Okay.
Only because of safety. I think they improved on the corner by bringing in Jarius Ward, and I really like Emmanuel Mosley. But we lost our slot corner, so I don't know what we're doing at slot. I don't know if it's going to be, not Avery Thomas, but Diamondor Lenore. That's unproven. We don't know. And then Jaquiski Tartt, you say what you want about him and the injuries and him not playing regularly, but he's been a pretty solid piece back there for a long time. Him and Ward have, for the most part, held it down and done a damn good job doing it. So, they got the safety via the Colts in the in free agency on special teams. I'm not really sold that he's. I heard another person, a content creator, was like, if that's your replacement in that position, he goes, that's not a good look. So who knows? I mean, Tart hasn't gotten much action on the free agent market, I don't think. As he didn't last year either, I don't think. So we'll see. I mean, if they can bring back Jaquiski Tartt, or they make a move on Tyrann Mathieu, which I know is not going to happen. But right now, I would say they're worse only because there's some question marks. We don't know slot and safety if what's replacing what.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the piece that's hard, is because I think when you look at that group, I think they're better at cornerback. So that's a plus. At safety, I don't, Jaquiski Tartt is a really good player, and it's hard to say that they're better without Jaquiski Tartt. The only thing that slows me down a little bit is that Jaquiski Tartt is injured so often. We don't know if he's going to be healthy, and that kind of thing. And he is a guy that could kind of maybe fall to the 49ers, right? He might come back. The market right now on safeties is really slow. I think part of the reason the market at safety is so slow is because that's a really deep position in the draft. And so teams are kind of waiting to find out how that position plays out before they go out and grab that safety. Can the 49ers get him to come back? If the 49ers can get Jaquiski Tartt back, that's a big plus.
Yeah.
Maybe if they're able to get a guy, I don't know, does Jalen Petrie fall in the draft that far down to him? Probably not. But I mean, again, that's a position right now. So right now we talk about secondary. I kind of agree with you. It's worse because of that. The slot piece is interesting because you have the options there are to slide Emmanuel Mosley inside a little bit. It's to put Dante Johnson in there a little bit. It's to put maybe Darquez Denard in there a little bit. There's all
Forgot about
kinds of
him.
there's a lot of, they have, the one thing that the 49ers do really well, because we're at the end of their main position groups, we have quarterback left over. But at this point, what I'll say is, one thing that the 49ers do a really good job of year after year is they do a good job of putting together a pretty solid team pre-draft, so that it opens them up to where they want to go in the draft. They don't have very many absolute big time needs that they have to fill.
Right.
I would say right now that their biggest need probably to fill would be safety, as
Yep.
far as a guy that would have to play right away, possibly would be safety. The next biggest need that they have is to get a center that they can develop, that can take over next year.
Yep.
And then you can kind of go off from there. Defensive end could be one, but the secondary piece, I'll go ahead and say that they're worse. I feel like that has a potential to be a same as well, maybe even better, because you're getting better play at the corner. But if you can solve your safety issue opposite of Jim Ward, then it could be even a better, right?
Right. I think too, with a lot of people are predicting, at least myself, and I was talking to I was in a stream yesterday with Kelts and Bay Area Baller. I said, why do I have a feeling that everybody's saying the Niners are going to get either they're going to get edge at that position, or they might take an offensive lineman. Part of me thinks that pick in the second round is going to end up being a safety, and we're going to be all like, just because it's a need, and from what all the reports are, it's a decent safety class this year. So I don't know. I mean, I would love edge at that position at that pick, but safety, if it's not addressed and we don't bring back Tart, and we don't bring in Tyrann Mathieu, which I keep talking about because I think that would be huge. But that's definitely, right now I think that they're worse, but who knows? Maybe they go safety in the second round, and then that's all taken care of. So we'll see.
Yeah. So that is the position to keep a look at. And then real quick, I'm going to answer this question. Swan asked, how would Dante Johnson be at strong safety? Well, here's the thing. And this is part of why I have it's hard to look at this team and know quite where they go. And this is a small sample size, right? It's only the half of a game. But in the second half of the week 18 game, that's what Dante Johnson played. He played safety. I don't know if he was playing strong safety or free safety, but he was playing safety opposite of Jimmy Ward. Darquez Denard was the guy that played the slot in that game for the 49ers in the second half. Dante Johnson started in the slot and slid back to strong safety. So, when you look at this secondary group right now as it stands for the 49ers, they have a lot of flexibility within that. Can they even use Travarius Ward in the slot? Are they going to become a team this year that's going to maybe match up a little bit more often with receivers than they've done in the past? Because really what we've seen them do is play one side or the other. They're either a left corner or right corner, and the only guy that moves around is the slot. So is this a season in which we see them start to maybe do a little bit more matchup? Are they going to start playing a little bit more man coverage? I think the addition of Travarius Ward, going into last season, we felt like the 49ers were going to be more of a man team. And then they lost Jason Verrett week 1, and we saw that kind of go away, and they became more of a zone team because they had to be, because they had young guys on the corners that weren't very good, and they had veterans on the corner that were even worse than the young guys outside of, when Mosley was playing. So, I think when you look at this team this year, the Travarius Ward edition, I think if you have a Travarius Ward is going to be looked at as the guy that can lock down a side of the field. Emmanuel Mosley is a guy that can play pretty strong man coverage.
Yep.
Avery Thomas is a guy that can play pretty strong if you put him in man coverage. I think if you really start to get him a little bit more comfortable in his role. The safety is a fascinating group to me. I think they have a potential to be really good. I don't see them dropping off quite as much if they can get that safety spot figured out opposite of Ward.
Yeah, and the thing about Avery Thomas too is a lot of people were saying last year that one of his biggest issues is he just needed to get stronger. He was in a lot of positions a lot of times to make plays, and he just guys outworked him or out physicaled him on point of point of, catch point on the catch point with the ball. So him being active in the weight room and getting himself and being healthy in camp, I think is gonna work out well for him. And who knows? You're right. Maybe he becomes that either the other outside corner and pushes Emmanuel Mosley into the slot, or they put him as the new slot guy. And you're right. If Javarius Ward can be that lockdown guy that a lot of people think he's going to be, who knows? This Niners secondary, but all of a sudden become kind of sticky, and then you add the rush, and who knows? Maybe they improve as a defense and they get that 2019 vibe back, and then we're all sitting pretty in next February. Who knows?
Yeah, no, who knows exactly? I mean, it's kind of crazy the way that all works out, and that's real quick before we get into the last topic, just because I do see there's a new super chat that I want to. Don't worry, I'm going to get to the one from earlier. Where was I? Sorry, I'm lost. Okay.
I know.
There we go.
It's crazy.
Jay Aguayo, thank you again for your donation. He says at Jack, if Tart comes back, we are worse. We could draft a safety like Brian Cook from Cincinnati or Lewis Klein from Georgia. Pretty deep draft class. Again, that's a good point as well. I think Brian Cook is a name. Brian Cook is a name that I threw out pre-combine to watch for the 49ers. So I'm with you there, Jay. And then as far as, I don't know about, here's the thing with Tart is when the 49ers had Tart and Ward back there, they were pretty strong last year. So that's the only reason why I say that. But a guy like Cook could be a young guy who's cheap and can fill that role for multiple years, and then we're not doing this back and forth with Tart. So I get it from that standpoint for sure. And I do like Brian Cook.
Definitely.
All right. So let's jump on to our last topic, which is better or worse quarterback. And so when I bring up the quarterback position, I do want to finally bring up Daryl's question. Thank you, Daryl, for asking this question earlier. Hopefully you stayed on with us. I hope you did with the $10 donation. You said, if Jimmy Garoppolo is still here in training camp, we find a way to trade or cut him, then decide to get his thumb surgery before that happens. What then? So you're going. So Daryl, you're going a little 49er QAnon with the last piece of it, right? But kind of just throwing out a conspiracy theory, which is fine. That would be a big time screw job for the 49ers, right? I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know if it does. Then the 49ers would definitely be screwed out of $7.5 million. That's what they would be. That's what they'd be out of if that was the case.
Yeah, I think with Jimmy Garoppolo, you touched on it a lot about, there's a lot of confusion about what they actually can get out of him if they move on from him later, and the rollover and the cap and everything. I was a lot more in the mindset of just get rid of him, like everybody else. But then when you start to kind of break it down on a financial standpoint of what they could roll over in next year, depending on when they get rid of him, hell, stay till freaking June. I don't care. Just leave when it's time. Like, go away. Because I think to be honest with you, if you ask if they've improved at quarterback, I think they have. Just from an athletic standpoint, from a youth standpoint, hopefully from a health standpoint, I'm high on Trey Lance because I think Trey Lance, for what he did show us last year, he showed the ability to get better and make adjustments. Plus, he's in a really good position with a really good coach, and Kyle's going to put him in a position around him with players that can make it easy for him. He's pretty much just got to be the facilitator like Jimmy. And then once he figures it all out, man, hell, he could be really scary because the way I look at it is I think he will have a slow start. I really do think he's going to have a slow start next year just because Kyle and him are going to have like a feeling out point. I honestly think because it's going to be him and Kyle. And I feel like if he can kind of get past that initial like bump and they start to figure out what he does best and what he struggles at, and then, you add all the pieces that are already around him, I think this quarterback room or this quarterback position is going to look like something we haven't seen in a long time. So I'm saying better. Oh, I think Jack froze. No. Oh, we lost Jack, guys. He'll be back shortly. Hold on one second. Thank you very much. We'll just wait for Jack for a minute, guys. Do you guys want to see Jimmy here by June, or do you want him cut right now? Let me know. Jack has a financial swerve on that whole situation that really makes it smart for the Niners to keep him till I think June. So because they can roll that money over into 2022 or 2023 and have like $50 million in cap space. So we'll see. Oh, did we lose Jack? Jack says, keep talking. All right. So what's everybody having for dinner tonight? Who's eating what? What is everybody having for dinner? Too many people checking their email on McDonald's Wi-Fi. That's funny. Trey Lance fixing to light the scene up. He isn't going to throw much. What's that? Oh, that's right. I can't click on the topics. Yeah, I'd like to see Trey Lance can be the type of guy who can do things in the intermediate well, because that's kind of where he struggled last year. Where Jimmy's really good in the underneath and intermediate stuff, and that's kind of where Trey was lacking last year. To see if he can make that improvement. Hey, he's back.
I'm back. See my McDonald's Wi-Fi. They found out that I was using it, and they decided that they were going to kick me off. I had to go give the guy a couple bucks to let me back on.
Nice.
But you were discussing why you feel like it's a plus, correct? For the
yeah. And I told them that one of the guys in the chat. I told him, I said it would be a smart to keep him till June. You shared something, I don't know where I seen it, where you kind of broke down the financials of keeping Jimmy till June, and there was kind of a representation of the actual facts of like him staying. If they would have cut him last year, the Niners would have had said like $50 million or whatever, and that actually was false, and it actually applies to this coming like June or something.
Yeah, well, I was a little right and a little wrong on that. The thought there was that the people were saying that if the 49ers had cut Garoppolo last year, what people were saying is the 49ers should have moved on from him because the 49ers would have an extra $50 million in cap space right now. That is actually correct. If they had cut him last year and not done anything else, right? If they just cut him, say like after the draft and just stopped at that point, then that's potentially correct. That isn't what likely wouldn't have been the case, but it could have been. And so I was a little bit wrong because when you start to run the numbers, they would have carried over 25 million. Garoppolo's cap hit wouldn't be that 25 million of Garoppolo's cap, 27 million that is on the books right now for Garoppolo. That would be gone already. So when you start the way that it works, they would have had the 50 million or some portion of that. But you can think of that in the same way this year. So when you hear people talk about the 49ers need to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo and that money is earmarked for George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, I'm of the mind to say that it's not, because the money that's going to go to those players in year one isn't going to be nearly what Jimmy Garoppolo's 25 million. But at the same time, where it is earmarked is because they could roll that $25 million over into next year, and that's going to continue to build and it explodes through. So, it could be a situation where maybe what the 49ers decide to do is take on more cap hit in either this year, once those deals get done and they move on from Garoppolo, they kind of front load those deals to allow them to do some other things next year, or they roll it over into other players' deals. So
would they front loaded with cap or with guarantees?
Cap.
Okay.
Cap. So because the way that when you're you buy down the cap hit by doing a lower base salary, right? But you're always going to have to fill it in down the road. You might have like this to say like you give a guy a third. If you give the guy a $30 million signing bonus, that signing bonus can only be spread out over 5 years. So that automatically means that their cap hits $6 million, right? Let's just do it super simple. We're going to do $100 million contract for 5 years. Okay. And the only bonus money you get is your signing bonus. Let's just do it super simple. And the signing bonus is 30 mil, right? So if I were to break that up in year one, I have to pay you at least your cap hit is going to be at least $6 million because that signing bonus can only be spread out over 5 years. So 30 divided by 5 is 6. So and then from there, the next piece is the minimum salary that you can have as a veteran. Let's just say it's $1 million or something like that. So that means the lowest your cap hit could be in year one is going to be 7 mil. But of that 100 million, that means next year I got to start building that up on the back end, right? And that's one of the things the 49ers actually do a pretty good job of, and that's why they have cap flexibility that they have with some of their bigger players, is because they give them a modest signing bonus with big guaranteed salaries. But in the positive piece of doing that is that having a big gap between your salary and your signing bonus, that allows you to now pull that salary out and start using and then kind of redo the deal as like more signing bonus. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so that's why, like, when I look at their future contracts and I'm seeing Fred Warner next year. Fred Warner is a guy that could be restructured next year if the 49ers decide to, because he has a big base salary and a small signing. He has a big bonus compared to what his has a big base salary compared to what his.
So they can convert in the years that the salary cap is able to be on the book, or the guarantee, the signing bonus is able to be on the books. They can always convert. They can convert the contract, like the actual contract, into signing bonus in those years.
Correct.
That's interesting. I never knew that.
Your base salary is what you can convert into bonus money, right? You can't really, but the bonus money is because the bonus money is your guarantee, right? There's also some guaranteed base and that kind of stuff, but you can kind of play around with that number. If you tell that guy, I'm guaranteeing you're going to get $20 million in X year based off of these numbers, you can still fudge around with the base pay. Which is
I'm really bad at math, so I'm just like, what?
Yeah, no, you can get into the weeds super fast with all this stuff. I really would say if you have questions on the salary cap that you're not sure of, follow 49ers Cap on Twitter. He does a really good job. Jason does a really good job over there. When I threw that out the other day, as far as the money that you're bringing up, had a lot of people telling me that I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And the more that I thought about it, the more that I kind of was starting to agree with them. And so I sent that back. I sent that out to him. I said, hey, I'm wrong here, right? And he kind of said yes and no. I was wrong, but not completely wrong. And, I know
you and Jesse were going back and forth on that one.
Well, Jesse and I were going back and forth on that. We were going back and forth on the media stuff. That's where we were arguing about.
And I agree with them. I did agree with them a little bit. It's you know what it is. I'm an East Coaster, so I'm a New Yorker. They're freaking brutal over here. Same thing in Philly. I do think the West Coast, they're a little bit more lax. Grant is kind of the anomaly where he'll ask that question that'll piss people off. His father was the same way. So sometimes you just want that one person that might kind of like ask why, because. Yeah, John Lynch has a way of kind of like finessing the media with how he is, and nobody really questions it sometimes. And I'm not saying that you have to be like a tool and be like a prick and be a certain way towards the media or towards the team, but sometimes I'd like to hear a little bit more pushback, I guess.
Yeah. When I go back and I look. So real quick, let's just end the quarterback conversation by saying that they're going to be better because they have Trey Lance. Trey Lance is going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. We know that, right? I think we both agree on that one. And Trey Lance is going to determine where the 49ers finish.
Yeah.
I really feel like if you took Trey Lance and you put him on the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, the expectation is that they win that game because of the throws that he can make that Jimmy doesn't make. I think what I saw out of him in week 17 of last year made me feel really comfortable moving forward without Jimmy Garoppolo at that position. And we heard that as well from Kyle Shanahan as to why they're looking to move on from Jimmy.
I feel like if he can, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I feel like if he can kind of master that, what Jimmy did well. Jimmy was really good in the intermediate game, his accuracy and just his ability to kind of like, get the plays in and out of the huddle, do that kind of stuff. I feel like once Trey masters that part of his game is when he'll really ascend. Because he does a lot of the off-script stuff really good. He's got the deep arm. He's able to hit quadrants of the field that the Niners, just can't do with Jimmy. But, he has a little bit of that long, elongated throwing motion that sometimes lends itself to inaccuracy. So if he can somehow work on that, and that's what he's doing in the offseason, it'll be interesting to see. Because I feel like that's his biggest hang-up, other than lack of experience, is just that intermediate, the short stuff where he just needs to clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that he has the ability to get. He has the ability to hit all the areas. There were some throws that he made there in week 17 that I hadn't quite seen from him on film from North Dakota State and stuff like that. So that's where I got excited. There were some good anticipation throws too. The throw to Brandon Ayuk at the end of the second quarter, right before halftime. That was a beauty. It had been wide open earlier in the game, and they came back to it. And the second time around, he didn't miss it. And then the fact that he took those shots down the field really opened up the offense in a way that we haven't seen.
Yeah, because teams you have to respect it as a defense.
Yeah,
With Jimmy, you don't even think about it.
Well, and the other thing too is it doesn't even have to be a completion, right? I mean,
right.
Then that sounds crazy. It's kind of a goofy thing for me to say, but it doesn't even have to be a completion. Just the thread of the ball down the field, like the deep ball that he threw to Brandon Ayuk. It's a pass interference. It doesn't go down as a completion, but it was a 40-yard play for the 49ers that set up a touchdown. So that's something that we didn't really get out of Jimmy Garoppolo. We didn't get those 50-50 balls that were thrown down the field that force a defender to make a play. And we're going to see more of that, I think, with Trey Lance as he continues to get more comfortable in this offense. And then moving off of the quarterbacks, as far as